Hi, and welcome back. I'm Stella, Payton. We've been talking about my book, Accessing the Windows of Heaven. Now, in the first segment, we talked about a little historic perspective on tithing, where we discussed Jacob at the Rock of Bethel. Then we went into the 9 purposes of the tithe. We talked about the 4 resources of the windows of heaven. And now we're going to talk about 7 reasons why many Christians don't prosper. Now, if you remember in segment 2, we talked briefly about that word in Malachi 3, and I think it's around verse 9. It says, "Where ye are cursed with a curse." This particular segment that we're going to cover in today's program is one of the most powerful revelations that God has ever given or revealed to me from His Word. And to my knowledge, I never heard anybody else teach it. And so I thought, surely one day I'll turn on the TV and I'll see T.D. Jakes teaching this, or I'll turn on the TV and I'll see, Joyce Meyer's teaching this. And I thought, but it never happened. And so it wasn't until 2007, 8, 9, when God really began to deal with me about putting some of the lessons that He had taught me from these passages that we just shared in these last segments with you. And so today is one of those days. We're going to be talking about 7 reasons why Christians don't prosper. Now, remember in Deuteronomy, it talks about, God says, "I have given you power to get wealth, that you may establish my covenant in the earth." The word wealth there is kail. It means the capacity to create something and to make it happen. So when God says, "I've given you power," He's not just talking about power in the context of authority, but what He's saying is, I have given you the resources, the connections, the relationships, the time. I've given you all of the necessary ingredients you'll need to create and build wealth. Why? Not to amass it and consume it on your own lust, but to actually use it to build the kingdom of God. Well, as I studied these particular scriptures one day, I was reading that passage in Malachi chapter 3 where it says, "Ye are cursed with a curse." And I clearly heard this voice inside my head. Now, I'm not saying I had this audible voice where God says, "What?" No, wasn't that kind of thing. I just heard this little inner ear thing kind of say, "What's the curse?" And I thought, that's a good question. So I read it again. And I thought, I don't know. And I kept reading stuff and said, "What's the curse?" And I said, I read it again. And I thought, well, I don't know. And my assumption was, like I mentioned earlier, that when we don't do what God tells us, then He's going to go, pow, break the transmission on your car. Not so. So I kept studying that word cursed. And one day, as I was studying, God took me to Jeremiah chapter 17, starting around verse 5. Very powerful. I encourage you to study this and read this on your own. But when He says, "Ye are cursed with a curse," for the first time in my life, I understood what He was talking about. And He outlines what it meant in Jeremiah 17:5. Now, remember when we said in one of the earlier segments that it wasn't about God going kapow, but that it was a mindset, that the word cursed really referred to the acquisition of, or coming under the influence of, or taking on a mental state which influences your thinking. And once something influences our thinking, it does what next? It influences our habits, our character, which eventually influences our actions. So when God says, "Hey, listen, you're cursed with a curse," He's not saying, "I curse you." No. He's saying, be careful, because you're starting to drift away from me, and you're starting to acquire a way of thinking that's going to bring your life into a pathway or a pattern which can cause some negative things to happen. And that's really what a curse is. It's nothing spectacular. There's no witch going capito. No, it's just an acquisition of a mindset which causes our lives to come under certain influences. Now let's look at Jeremiah 17:5 and see exactly what was he talking about. Jeremiah 17:5 starts out by saying, "Cursed be the man who trusts in man." Wow. Cursed be the man that trusts in man. So what he was saying is, the first part of the curse of Malachi chapter 3 was a person whose trust is misplaced. God tells us all the time, He says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart, Lean not, or don't try to stand on your own understanding, but in everything that you do, or in all of your ways, what? Acknowledge. Now, I love that word acknowledge. I kind of break it up, and I say, act on the knowledge of God. So when you in all thy ways acknowledge God, when you act on the knowledge of God, it means you are acting based upon your understanding of who He is. So when He says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart, don't lean on your own understanding, don't try to figure it out, but in all your ways, act on the knowledge of God, and He shall what? He'll direct your path. Well, cursed be the man, Jeremiah 17:5 starts out by saying, cursed be the man who doesn't do that, who doesn't act on the knowledge of God. But what he does, he says, cursed be the man that, number one, trust in man. So the first part of that cursed in Malachi chapter 3, chapter 3, verse 9, it says, first part of that man, cursed be the man that trusts in man. So it's misplaced trust. It's depending on somebody to do or support. So you sort of sounds like, hey ma, I'm running a little short this month, you got an extra $500 to float my rent till I'm 15 when I get paid again. Cursed be the man that trusts in man. Here's number 2. Cursed be the man that trusts in man, that makes flesh his arm. That second part is actually talking about a spirit of self-reliance. It means, I can do this. So you've got 2 jobs now, right? You're working 2 jobs and you think, wow, I've got to pay my homeowner's insurance coming up. Maybe if I go take that midnight shift at Walmart, I might be able to make that $900 payment on time. Cursed be the man that trusts in man, that makes flesh his arms. Wow, a spirit of self-reliance. So number 1, cursed be the man that trusts in man, that makes flesh his arm. Here's number 3, whose heart departs from the Lord. Cursed be the man that trusts in man, that makes flesh his arm, whose heart departs from the Lord. Now remember what we said earlier, that in Matthew chapter 6, it says, 6:21, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So the treasure is where the treasure is currently located, okay? Not where you're going to put it, not where you're thinking about it. It's like, what's there? Where do you put it, okay? Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. In other words, the heart follows the stuff. In other words, where you aim, or where your gyroscope goes, the heart follows. And that's what money is. It really is nothing more than a barometer, a measuring stick, a tool to help you gauge where your heart is. So, cursed be the man. We're talking about the curse of Malachi chapter 3, verse 9 says, cursed be the man. You are cursed with a curse. So what does that curse mean? It doesn't mean that God goes kapow. It just means, number 1, cursed be the man that trusts in man. That's the spirit of depending on others. That makes flesh his arm. That's the spirit of self-reliance. Whose heart departs from the Lord. That's misplaced affections. Number 4, he shall be like the heath in the desert. Now, the best way for me to understand heath and what that meant, remember the old Western movies with the big tumbleweeds, when the winds would blow or the desert storm would come and the sand would be blowing, and you see these bushes blowing across the desert? Well, that's kind of like a heath. A heath is a plant that gets just enough water to survive, but never enough water to thrive. And once the plant gets just so big, it breaks off and blows across the desert. To me, I see that as saying paycheck to paycheck. Just enough money to make the rent, just enough money to keep the lights on this month, but never enough to move forward. He shall be like the heath in the desert. Here's number 5. So we're talking about the 7 reasons many Christians don't prosper, they don't thrive. Cursed be the man that trusts in man, makes flesh his arm, whose heart departs from the Lord. He shall be like the heath in the desert. Here's number 5. This one is powerful. It says, he shall not see when good comes. Notice it didn't say if good comes. It says he shall not see when good comes. That means God is saying, look, I'm constantly sending you opportunities to get the things that you want. I'm constantly sending you open doors to give you access to the things that you've asked for. But the problem isn't that I'm not sinning, it's that you can't see it. He shall not see when good comes. And I always use this as an example. It's sort of like the word see there is not visual sight. It actually means more of mental perception, the ability to recognize the importance and the significance of a thing. So let me explain what that means. The importance and the significance of. When you say, for example, oh, I want a house, and you tell your friend, oh, I really want a new house. I really want a new house. I'm tired of renting, tired of living in this apartment. I got 3 kids. We really want to get my kids in the house. And so so you just say, God, I want a house. And you're praying for a house, right? And so a week later, that same friend comes, hey, they're having a first-time homebuyers seminar at my office next week. I got you a ticket. Girl, I don't have time to go to the seminar for a whole day. I got to go all day, from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock all day, my whole Saturday. I got stuff to do. He shall not see or perceive the importance and the significance of a thing. Cursed be the man that trusts in man, makes flesh his arm, whose heart departs from the Lord. He shall be like the heath in the desert. He shall not see when good comes. Let's see what the next one is. Oh, wow. He shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness. Now this one is kind of deep, because when you start talking about parched places in the wilderness, you start thinking two things you think about. It's dry, and then whenever I have that word wilderness, it's indicative of repeated cycles. So when the children of Israel were in the wilderness, what did they do? They wandered around the same little spot, the same little territory, going in that same circle for 40 years. And that tells me that when he talks about inhabiting the parched places in the wilderness, that's talking about I'm going to be in a state, or I'm going to acquire a mindset where I go through the same cycle over and over again. I get with a guy, I like him. He pushes me around a little bit. I say, oh, he loves me. Then next thing I know, he's slapping me upside my head. And I'm going, I did something wrong. Then he's beating me. Finally I call the police. Finally he gets arrested. And I get myself together, and, I'll get some treatment. And, all of a sudden I meet a guy who's really nice. And one day he pushes me. And I go, it was me. Cycles. Parched places in the wilderness. Finally, the last reason why many Christians don't succeed and why they don't prosper. Number 7, he shall inhabit a salt land. Now this last one is really powerful to me, because it makes me, when you think about salt makes you thirsty. It makes your mouth want something. So when you start talking about a salt land, it's that feeling of knowing inside of yourself that there has to be more than this. There's got to be more to my life that I'm experiencing, and I just can't seem to get my hand on it. So that's it. That's what he says in Malachi chapter 3, verse 9, you're cursed with a curse. What was he talking about? He was talking about Jeremiah 17:5. Cursed be the man that one trusts in man, spirit of relying on others, makes flesh his arm, spirit of self-reliance, whose heart departs from the Lord, spirit of misplaced affection, shall be like the heath in the desert, spirit of lack of growth, shall not see when good comes, spirit of distorted perceptions, shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness, spirit of wandering, and last but not least, shall inhabit the salt. Salt makes you thirsty. A spirit of longing and yet never being satisfied. Well, I think that's about as much as I'm going to cover from this book, Accessing the Windows of Heaven. I'm going to post these. I hope you find them helpful. This book, at least this particular edition, will still be available. We have a few copies left. You can order a hard copy. It will be mailed and shipped to you. Once those copies are gone, however, for a season, the only place you'll be able to get it will be, you'll be able to download it on Kindle. And then probably a little bit later in the year, we're going to revise that one as soon as we get the next wave of books out. Wicked Wealth, the Wealth Transfer Series. That is the series of books that I'm so excited about. It was so much information, I couldn't get it in one volume. And so we decided to break it up into several, and we're going to be releasing those as soon as I can get some of the other things done. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Stella Payton, and we have been talking about accessing the windows of heaven, how to reap the benefits of tithing. If you haven't seen the video that gives you my testimony, which gives you basically a historical account of where this information came from, make sure you tune in to my channel on YouTube, Stella Payton or Stella MPP. Thank you so much, and you make it a terrific day.